All right, so now we're going to continue reading The Gold Threaded Dress by Carolyn Marsden, starting on chapter 5. What does the sign on that bus say? Kung Mer asked Oi. Winslow Gardens. It's the next bus. If only Kung Mer would learn to drive. At least on Saturdays they could drop Kung Pa off at work and have the car. Kung Mer held out a handful of change. Oi, pick out the correct amount. It's easy, Mer. I'll show you again. A big silver one and 3, and the tiny silver one for each of us. Luck rides free. Every Saturday, Oi went to learn Thai dancing from Pak, the woman who owned the auto parts store across town. Today she waited in the back room while Pak rang up one more sale. Luck toddled along the dusty floor, pulling herself up against the boxes labeled battery cables and brake lights. Swasti, Pak greeted Oi, her hands pressed together and held at her chest. She gave a little bow. Swasti, Oi answered, bowing in return. Pak turned on the tape player, and the sounds of tiny bells filled the storeroom. Oi noticed that a flash of sadness always crossed Pak's face when the music started. The familiar sounds were a reminder of a life left far behind. At the sight of Pak's face, Oi recalled the story Kung Pa used to tell her at bedtime back in the days when he worked only the lunch shift. When Oi was almost 5 years old and still lived in Thailand, Mrs. Bonsub came all the way from America looking for a cook for her restaurant. She invited the applicants to cook just one dish, squid curry. In the kitchen, along with the other prospective cooks, Kung Pa took turns watching through the window into the dining room as Mrs. Bonsub slowly sampled each concoction. Times had gotten hard in Thailand, he explained to Oi. Suddenly, money wasn't worth much anymore. In America, I'd be able to make enough to support you and your mother and send some home to Thailand. But America was exactly halfway across the world. I'd be away from my mother, my cousins, my sisters, and brothers. I wasn't sure if I wanted to win that cooking contest or lose it. Mrs. Bonsub had pushed open the double doors into the kitchen, her long red fingernails clicking against the wood. Buntun Chai Sang, your dish is the tastiest. Can you leave for the States right away? Oi pulled herself back from Kung Pa's story. Pak was giving her 2 red candles, positioning them between her first 2 fingers. Although the candles weren't lit, Oi pretended they were. She was practicing Rumtin, the candle dance of northern Thailand. Pak talked about Oi performing the dance for the festival of Loi Krathong. If so, she would wear the pink dress. When she performed this dance, Oi would have to hold the candles very carefully and dance smoothly so that the flames would stay lit. She would have to keep smiling even though drops of hot wax fell on her hands. Chapter 6. On Sunday, Pak picked up Oi and her family except for Kung Pa, who was away cooking as usual. Oi loved to touch the small gold Buddha that was glued to the dashboard of Pak's white Mercedes-Benz. Luck grabbed at the garland of plastic flowers hanging from the visor. On her lap, Kung Mer balanced 3 metal bowls clamped on top of each other. The top bowl held pineapple curry, the second rice soup, and the bottom one pad thai, noodles with peanut sauce. Oi liked going to the small temple, which was really just a house in a regular neighborhood. It looked nothing like the temples in Thailand, covered with gold and flashing jewels, with Buddhas as big as buildings. On Sunday mornings, Oi found herself among the people who had narrow brown eyes and black hair and silky skin like hers. One time, Oi had asked Kung Mer why, except for Kung Pa, all the temple members were women. Mer had told her that the women had married American soldiers who were stationed in Thailand during the war in Vietnam, and that the soldiers had brought them to America. They were called war brides. So the children at the temple, all of whom were either older or younger than Oi, were only half Thai. They had dark brown hair instead of black, and their eyes ranged from pure Thai to completely round. But still, Oi wished that children like these went to her school. Then she wouldn't be so alone. 3 monks in their bright orange robes were already chanting in the living room. Oi stood on the threshold and breathed deeply, absorbing not only the scent of incense that rose from the corners and the fragrant spices from the kitchen, but also the droning sound of the familiar chants. She and Mare knelt with the other woman on the mats before the monks. Luck played with Pock's gold bracelet. Oi tried not to think of anything at all. She listened to the way her breath passed in and out of her chest. She gazed at the golden Buddha on the platform above, the serene, half-closed eyes, the hands held as though to bless her. But today, Oi's mind wouldn't grow quiet. She found herself thinking over and over about Liliandra. Maybe the Buddha could arrange things so that Liliandra would forget about the dress and invite Oi to be a member of the club anyway. The chanting stopped and the monks went into the dining room to eat their lunch. Oi followed Kung Mare into the kitchen. The woman chanted in Thai while the American husbands gathered by the couch and talked together. Oi thought of only those men as American, even though Mare had told her that some of their wives were American citizens, too. Every bit of counter space was covered with plates of food. Mrs. Bonsub had brought delicates flown in from Thailand. Oi's mouth watered at the thought of the jumbo prawns and the durian, the luscious soft fruit. But no one could touch the food until the monks in the other room had finished eating. Mrs. Bonsub came close to Oi. I hear that you're doing well in school. Yes, Mrs. Bonsub, I make good grades. Oi bowed her head a little. That's good. I'm sure your parents are very proud of you. Oi was afraid that if she looked up into Mrs. Bonsub's face, her expression might reveal that in spite of doing well in math and reading, she was unhappy at school. If Mrs. Bonsub knew that she was having such silly problems, she might wonder if Kung Pa had been a good choice for a cook. So I want you to think, why does Oi think her problems are silly? Why do you think that Oi thinks her problems are silly? I want you to take a minute and think about it and write your answer in the Google form.